A terrifying tyrant with his cold-blooded nature. And a scheming wife capable of resisting various poisons. This combination created a challenging love for them. Difficulties, plans, schemes, and the obscure things behind the story. What will this thorny love affair face? Let's follow the story together. In a magnificent room, intricately decorated with luxurious curtains. A young man and woman seemed to be having breakfast, but the atmosphere was quite quiet. The two of them slowly ate the steak on the table, no one speaking to the other. Suddenly, the young man spoke, breaking the earlier silence. Leah Salitz, the white-haired girl named Leah Salitz, who had just raised her fork, paused when called, a little surprised. Leah Salitz turned to look at the young man with slightly averted eyes and hesitantly asked, "How may I help, Your Majesty?" The black-haired young man who had just called was Sion Bermut, the emperor of this nation. He turned to look at Leah Salitz, his voice cold with a hint of sulkiness. Asking, "Lately, why don't you ask if I've eaten breakfast anymore?" Leah Salitz innocently smiled and replied happily, "Because Your Majesty is healthy now." Sion Bermut's eyes sharpened, glancing at the woman beside him and muttering, "So what if I'm healthy? You don't care about me anymore?" Sion Bermut began to feel angry, a dark cloud enveloping him, his eyes flashing with a few intimidating rays of hostility. Leah Salitz seemed unaware that Sion Bermut was angry. She still smiled and teased him, "Oh dear, why do you say that?" Leah Salitz also said, "I once said, my lifelong wish is for Your Majesty to always be healthy." This answer satisfied Sion Bermut. He withdrew his earlier hostile gaze and looked at Leah Salitz with gentle eyes, mixed with a hint of shyness. He replied, "All right then." Leah Salitz looked at Sion Bermut's demeanor at this moment and thought to herself, "Hayes, he really is handsome." Leah Salitz remembered the things she had done for Sion Bermut. She thought to herself, for the past 2 years, thinking about how I had to try to make his face radiant and healthy like this. Enduring the things he was obsessed with, the pressure, or providing sleep ASMR to help Sion Bermut sleep better, or frequently asking about his health. Leah Salitz at this moment could only silently cry internally. She was truly speechless. But finally, today had come. Leah Salitz carefully used a knife to cut the meat on the plate while carefully thinking about the words she was about to say. The day to end it all, everything had arrived. Leah Salitz resolved herself once, then hesitated and said to Sion Bermut, Your Majesty. I have something to say." Leah Salitz looked radiantly at Sion Bermut. Sion Bermut only asked, "What is it?" Leah Salitz kept the smile on her face, her words somewhat light, "Let's get a divorce. Because Your Majesty no longer needs me, so." Leah Salitz's words were not yet finished when Sion Bermut forcefully stabbed his steak knife into the plate, startling her and making her want to faint. Sion Bermut immediately turned to look at Leah Salitz, his eyebrows furrowed so much they almost touched. He growled, "What?" Leah Salitz's heart pounded faster and faster. Seeing Sion Bermut's unhappy face, she could only scream, "Oh dear, why the frown?" Leah Salitz rushed to comfort the sulking puppy in front of her. She gently brushed Sion Bermut's hair aside and said, "Now I also have to find my own life, in a peaceful village." Sion Bermut's eyes fell, a fleeting sadness passing through them. His voice was somewhat forced, "So, you plan to leave the palace?" Leah Salitz replied clearly with a rather comfortable demeanor, "Yes, after all, we are only in a political marriage, and Your Majesty is also very uncomfortable because of my father. Right?" As she spoke, Leah Salitz ordered a servant to bring a prepared divorce paper. "So, now I will leave." Leah Salitz finished speaking and pushed the paper towards Sion Bermut. Sion Bermut held the paper in his hand, his face clearly unhappy, but also somewhat surprised by Leah Salitz's decision. The 3 words divorce petition hit Sion Bermut square in the eye. He unconsciously clenched a corner of the paper, causing the petition to wrinkle. Immediately, Sion Bermut slammed the divorce paper onto the table and said in a cold voice, "As you wish." After a moment, Sion Bermut spoke, "We will discuss this again during afternoon tea." Leah Salitz clapped her hands a few times and said excitedly, "Oh dear, really?" Suddenly, Sion Bermut cast aside his gloomy expression and turned to look at Leah Salitz, a radiant smile blooming on his face. "Let's finish eating first." Leah Salitz heard that Sion Bermut seemed to have yielded to her and replied happily and warmly, "Yes, Your Majesty." At this moment, Leah Salitz sighed in relief and smiled to herself, thinking, "Luckily, it's better than I thought. It seems everything will progress quickly, right?" Leah Salitz was so focused on her thoughts that she didn't notice Sion Bermut beside her, resting his chin on his hand and looking at her with a meaningful gaze. That afternoon, the sun was setting. Inside the luxurious and quiet palace, a loud scream suddenly echoed, "Ah!" Sion Bermut was holding a glass of dark red wine in his hand, a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. His complexion was visibly pale. Your Majesty, blood is flowing from your mouth." Leah Salitz, sitting opposite him, was so worried she panicked, her voice trembling incessantly. "Leah," as soon as he finished speaking, Sion Bermut's entire body suddenly collapsed, blood still flowing from the corner of his mouth. Leah Salitz jumped up in alarm, slapping the table forcefully and urgently shouting, "Your Majesty, call for a doctor immediately." She ordered the servant standing nearby. Then she rushed to Sion Bermut's side, muttering as she ran, "What on earth is happening?" Suddenly, Leah Salitz froze. A thought flashed through her mind, "Wait a minute, there's something strange." Dr. Merton also rushed over at this moment, shouting loudly, "Your Majesty, what is this?" As for Sion Bermut, 2 streams of blood had dried on the corner of his mouth, his eyes tightly closed, lying motionless on the ground. Seeing this, Leah Salitz immediately rushed over and called out in worry, "Your Majesty, are you all right?" After examining him, Dr. Merton bowed his head and concluded with a stutter, This reaction, perhaps your Majesty has been poisoned." Leah Salitz was startled and asked again, "What?" The doctor's face became increasingly unpleasant. It must be that the strange wine, so he realized it, she wondered. Why would he do that when he is a very careful person? Leah Salitz became stiff. No, could it be? Suddenly, Sion Bermut, who was lying down, woke up. He struggled to raise his hand and search, "Leah, I hurt so much." Despite this, a slight smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. Leah Salitz stood watching, extremely worried. She thought to herself, "No way, Your Majesty, you didn't intentionally drink poison, did you?" Leah Salitz's eyes focused on the poisoned young man below. Sion Bermut's face at this moment showed an uncontrollable satisfaction, smiling brightly while poisoned. Leah Salitz gradually felt worried for herself. How could the main character fall into this situation? In Leah Salitz's mind, she suddenly recalled some things from the past. Everything started 2 years ago. Leah Salitz Celeste was the name of the female protagonist in the novel. She remembered that in the fantasy novel, as long as it wasn't her ending up disappointed like a dragon's head drowned. The character Leah Salitz had a beautiful appearance but spent her days immersed in pleasures, surrounded by men all the time. To emphasize the failed social relationship of the protagonist, who was a tyrant, but something happened during that wine party, Leah Salitz suddenly had a strange reaction. Leah Salitz knelt down and spat out a mouthful of liquid. A commotion suddenly arose. The Empress is so troublesome, a supporting character who is poisoned without knowing the reason or the culprit. At that time, Sion Bermut stood in front of Leah Salitz's body, which was beginning to grow cold, without saying a word. Therefore, the Emperor went mad and committed suicide. And the country fell into ruin. The current Leah Salitz remembered the ending of the novel As Long as It's Not Me. She thought to herself, what's even more illogical is that they were only in a political marriage, not a couple, simply in the final chapter. As long as it's not me, at this moment, the current Leah Salitz was a reader. After reading the ending, she had read many comments like, "What kind of ending is this? Garbage novel." Others agreed, "A waste of money, don't buy it anymore." To the author, "Did you write this in a hurry? Is this ending really the best? It lacks logic. The plot is terrible." Countless comments were made about this novel. As for the current Leah Salitz, she had a bold move. She suddenly remembered, "I just left the 10,000th comment, you know? How pitiful, I even want to live in that person's place." As if it was just a casual comment. "Your Majesty," someone suddenly called Leah Salitz. The maid beside her kept shaking Leah Salitz, her voice a little urgent, "Empress, Your Majesty, it is time for you to wake up." Leah Salitz wearily opened one eye when someone touched her. She sat up, yawned slightly, and the maid called out loudly, "Bring the drink here quickly." Leah Salitz at this moment, it seemed Leah Salitz the reader had noticed her strange change. She thought to herself, perhaps the author, or rather, God, read my comment. She rushed to the dressing mirror in the room, her eyes stunned as she looked at the face in the mirror. Unbelievable, on that day, I entered the body of Leah Salitz Celeste. From now on, Leah Salitz the reader would be called Leah Salitz. Leah Salitz ruffled her hair, her face pale. She thought to herself, I wasn't really planning to live in her place. I don't want to be poisoned. First, let's have some water and think about it. She quickly took a few sips of water brought by the maid. Suddenly, Leah Salitz choked and quickly spat the water out of her mouth. It could even form a stream. Leah Salitz turned pale and looked at the three maids standing beside her, asking with difficulty, What is it? What is happening? The maids stumbled and continuously bowed, begging for forgiveness. Please forgive us, Your Majesty. Your Majesty's favorite wine has run out, so I prepared beer. Leah Salitz heard this, wiped the water still on her mouth, and asked again, What? She thought to herself, no, giving wine to someone who just woke up is the problem. Suddenly she remembered something. Wait, the problem is with Leah, the girl in this novel, Leah Salitz, who drinks wine like water. A maid said tremblingly, Her name is Lurin, Empress Your Majesty, I will not let something like this happen again. However, I am very sorry, if we dismiss the new maid after only 1 week, there will be rumors. Leah Salitz wearily rubbed her forehead. She replied dejectedly, I understand, but from now on, no drinking alcohol, okay? Hearing her mistress say this, Lurin replied happily, Yes, Your Majesty, then please prepare the schedule for today. Leah Salitz muttered, still rubbing her forehead, today's schedule. She thought to herself, what should I do? If I'm suspected? If it's Leah, then certainly. A thought suddenly flashed in Leah Salitz's intelligent head. Leah Salitz turned around and said to Lurin, that's right, after bathing. First, I will go to the concubine quarters, Leah Salitz announced clearly. After a while, Lurin and the other two maids prepared an outfit for Leah Salitz. Today, she wore a red dress with platinum hair, making her look truly sharp. Looking in the mirror, Leah Salitz thought to herself, my husband, and also the tyrant of this country, Emperor Sion Bermut, well. After Leah's death, he became a madman and destroyed the entire country. At the age of 28, he committed suicide. These were the things written in the fantasy novel that Leah Salitz had read. As far as I remember, the time of their deaths wasn't too far apart. Leah Salitz began to ponder. The current age of the protagonist is 26, Leah Salitz wondered how long she had lived this year. Leah Salitz looked at herself in the mirror but her mind was completely unfocused. The maid beside her spoke, everything is ready, Your Majesty. After calculating, Leah Salitz made a firm resolution in her heart, so, I have 2 more years until I die. Suddenly, Leah Salitz's face darkened. She rested her hand on the dressing table and muttered to herself, Time, I don't have any more time. To survive, everything must be resolved. Lurin, seeing her strange expression, stuttered, Your Majesty. Leah Salitz urgently turned to call the maid, Lurin, quickly go to the concubine quarters. Lurin also followed her urgently, Yes, Your Majesty. Leah Salitz began to leave the room. Along the hallway, maids were lined up, bowing respectfully to Leah Salitz. After she left, they began to chatter among themselves. Someone said, Indeed, the Empress will go today, right? The person next to her replied, What else is there to say? It seems the Empress is planning to bankrupt the treasury. It's been 3 months since she got married. In this novel, Leah Salitz was a name full of controversy. Although she knew these whispers didn't concern her, having transmigrated into Leah Salitz, she was Leah Salitz. Yes, saying so was also obvious, according to the increasingly clear memories of Leah Salitz. In those old memories, Leah Salitz had provided the men living with her with a huge allowance, and she even held competitions, including a beauty contest, where she even put a diamond ring on the winner's toe. Thinking of this, Leah Salitz silently shed tears of despair. She thought to herself, with such a terrible personality, and addicted to alcohol and men, how could I not be poisoned? Leah Salitz leaned against the wall dejectedly, only capable of silent tears. A dark cloud flew over her head. Leah Salitz thought to herself, after all, since I have the title of Empress, they won't dare to assassinate me in one go. Leah Salitz paused for a moment. She thought to herself, they will probably secretly poison me slowly over a long period so as not to be discovered. Fortunately, my body has no unusual signs at the moment, so there is still a chance. Temporarily knowing that her body was still healthy, Leah Salitz had to find a way to save her own life. She had to try to change the plot. She thought to herself, I must be careful and take care so that the emperor does not become a madman. Even if I survive, if the country collapses, a peaceful future will disappear. Come to think of it, His Majesty has never said anything about the concubine quarters, has he? It seems that in Leah's memory, that didn't happen either. She tried to rummage through the memories in her head without paying attention to everything around her. Luren suddenly spoke, Empress Your Majesty. Leah Salitz, being called, turned and asked, what is it? Luren spoke softly into her ear, shall I prepare beer as well, Your Majesty? Leah Salitz immediately became unhappy and reminded Luren, what are you saying? I already told you I'm giving up alcohol and beer. Luren continued in a low voice, yesterday, when you visited the concubine quarters, didn't you say to prepare a drinking game? This remark was like a bucket of cold water poured directly on Leah Salitz's face. She was silenced, like a mute duck. Luren recalled yesterday's events, when the handsome men in the Empress's concubine quarters hugged, fed fruit, and played with Leah Salitz. She reminded Leah Salitz that the Empress had said the winner would be granted the first opportunity, right? Leah Salitz blushed and forcefully pushed open the door to the concubine quarters, shouting, no, cancel everything, cancel everything. Leah Salitz's face at this moment seemed to have lost all color. She tiredly scolded, this degenerate person, if I don't quickly reform, then. Before she could finish speaking, she had to stop and gasp when she saw the scene in front of her. Inside, the handsome men all said in unison in gentle voices, Welcome, Your Majesty. There were young men who had taken off their shirts to show off their six-packs. Some wore shirts but with the buttons undone, some had the gentle beauty of platinum hair. Leah Salitz's degenerate flower garden was hitting her straight in the eye. A young man with long red hair like a luxurious rose spoke, Your Majesty, please come here. Your Majesty, please sit here. I have changed to softer cushions for you, this young man said hospitably, inviting Leah Salitz. The black-haired young man on the other side, seeing this, raised his voice to remind him, how rude, Your Majesty will sit next to me. Another young man with blonde hair rushed over to argue, how funny, I was the winner of the drinking game yesterday. The black-haired young man frowned and retorted, I am the one His Majesty loves. What is this? How dare you do that? This guy, the argument in the concubine quarters flower garden erupted fiercely. They didn't even pay attention to Leah Salitz standing there. Leah Salitz witnessed the scene above and chuckled, she wanted to die on the spot. She said dejectedly, really? She thought to herself, it's a mess. Then Leah Salitz shouted loudly, hey. Her golden words made those demons stop. They grabbed each other's clothes and punched each other. Some even pulled each other's hair, but when they heard Leah Salitz's voice, they all turned back to look, stuttering, Your Majesty. All of you, Leah Salitz's hands trembled, her teeth clenched in anger. Leah Salitz was fuming, her state at this moment was like a lioness with a ruffled mane. She enunciated each word, pack your things and go, everyone is fired. The group of men were startled and confused, asking again, Your Majesty. They tried to calm themselves down. Someone pretended to be happy and teased, you know how to joke, you're really mischievous, someone else even said sweetly. How can we live without Your Majesty here? But these words seemed to have no effect on Leah Salitz's mood at this moment. She continued, that's not it. Then, Leah Salitz pointed directly towards that door. Immediately pack your things and leave, her cold voice rang out. The group of men's faces froze, then their souls left their bodies. Suddenly, a young man spoke, tears streaming down his cheeks, Your Majesty. The whole group knelt down, crying and begging, Your Majesty, no, please don't. The blonde-haired young man was probably crying the loudest, but it was true that handsome men looked beautiful even when crying. We have nowhere to return if we don't have these concubine quarters. The rest of the group also chimed in with the blonde young man, Empress Your Majesty, how can you abandon us like this, please don't abandon me. Leah Salitz was grabbed by her dress, a little scared, and said, let go of me. In this urgent situation, what should Leah Salitz do? Of course, call for guards. She looked at the two soldiers and shouted, why are you just standing there? Help me. Immediately, a sword was pointed directly at the neck of the black-haired young man who was crying below, and there was a shout, get out of the way. He could only sob a few times. After that, the group of men continued to scream in despair. This one said, that one said, the noise was truly headache-inducing. Even Leah Salitz herself couldn't stand it. She kept rubbing her temples. What they were yelling was, "Your Majesty, you indirectly kissed me last night, didn't you?" Or something like, "How can you deceive a man's heart and then leave like this?" Leah Salitz looked at those handsome faces, their crying beautiful and heartbreaking. Their cheeks were all flushed. She thought to herself, this way there will be no ending. It's like tax evaders who only care about appearances. After that, to extinguish their intention to cry, Leah Salitz began to scold each of them one by one. She pointed at the black-haired young man, first of all. You have too big a butt, it's annoying." The young man heard this and cried, "Yesterday you said it was attractive." Then, she pointed out each person, "You are a criminal who violates social morality, stop crying, you too, your muscles are disgusting." The group of young men could only cry and complain. "You are too much, Your Majesty." One by one, no one escaped Leah Salitz's sight. She found everything to criticize them. "Your hair color isn't very nice, this was when I was playing with paint with Your Majesty." "Your mouth stinks, Your Majesty, you too, go outside." Finally, Leah Salitz had to shout loudly, "Get out." After pointing at each person for a while, Leah Salitz was exhausted and panting continuously. Finally, it's all cleared out. Leah Salitz looked at the concubine quarters, which were lively just a moment ago but now empty. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and let out a sigh of relief. Lurin stood beside her, noticing the unusual behavior of the empress she always accompanied. She asked anxiously, "Your Majesty, are you unhappy?" Leah Salitz turned to look at Lurin with a gentle smile. "No, I'm not." Lurin foolishly continued, "I understand you don't like tonight, but if it's so sudden." Leah Salitz's face fell, and she asked again, "Tonight?" Lurin immediately burst into tears, grabbing Leah Salitz's skirt. "Don't mind what the officials say about the palace, please rest and relax before night comes." Leah Salitz still didn't understand what was happening. Suddenly, Lurin brightened up. She came up with an idea. What if I bring a handsomer man?" Leah Salitz replied helplessly, "That's not it." The soldier next to her also volunteered, "Yes, I will make a list of handsome men to bring to Your Majesty." Leah Salitz was completely shocked by these words. She thought to herself, no matter how terrible Leah Salitz was, how could she be considered so promiscuous? She quickly grabbed the two people in front of her. "No, listen to me." The soldier moved closer to Leah Salitz and asked, "Then what is it?" "Huh?" He suddenly let out a gasp, then Leah Salitz and he stared at each other, their heads filled with question marks. After that, he took off his soldier's uniform, revealing his six-pack body, his cheeks flushed, and said in a teasing voice, "Indeed, is it my turn? I'm sorry. Your Majesty, I didn't expect something like this to happen, so it's still old underwear." Lurin, standing next to him, also agreed. She bowed and said, "If you need a quiet space, I can lead you to the bedroom." Leah Salitz stood there, watching the two of them act out the scene, speechless. Lurin said again, "I will leave now." Leah Salitz cried out in panic, "You don't have to." The soldier suddenly collapsed. "After all, you don't like underwear? Then I will take it all off." Leah Salitz's hair stood on end in fright. She covered her face with both hands and shouted loudly, "Nothing is needed, everyone get out immediately." She angrily chased them all out. The room was now much quieter, the luxurious furnishings shimmering with gold. Leah Salitz flew straight onto the bed and hugged the pillow, the bed soft and warm. "Finally, I got rid of all those people. Now I can rest." Leah Salitz thought to herself, feeling happy, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Rolling back and forth, Leah Salitz also let out a mischievous smile of satisfaction. "Ho ho, it's all Leah Salitz's karma, she deserved this." Lurin approached Leah Salitz's bed, smiling brightly and announcing to Leah Salitz, "Your Majesty, how should we handle the rest of the people in the concubine quarters?" Hearing this, Leah Salitz's exhausted body suddenly shot up. She was startled and asked, "Huh? There are more?" "Chase all those people out tomorrow as well," she ordered decisively, without any regard for the men's feelings. If she felt sorry for anyone, it was only for her own little life. Lurin only replied softly, "Yes, Your Majesty." After a moment, Lurin said again, "Then, would Your Majesty like to relax with an aromatherapy massage and have a light dinner while waiting for the evening?" Leah Salitz replied wearily, "No, I just want to sleep like this." However, tonight we must prepare for the wedding night, Luren's serious voice rang out. This remark stirred Leah Salitz. She sat up and asked, wedding night? In Leah Salitz's mind, it was as if 1,000 lightning bolts flashed. Her face darkened, and she covered her mouth in panic. Wedding night, wedding night? Does that mean I have to sleep with him? With that tyrant? This was not in the original story, Leah Salitz screamed internally. Leah Salitz forced a smile at Luren. It seems I have alcohol-induced amnesia. Luren replied worriedly, yes, your majesty, what are you saying? Tears streamed down Leah Salitz's face as the game ended. She muttered, I don't understand, why? She awkwardly turned her face away, stuttering as she asked, that wedding night, do we have to do it today? Luren wore a calm expression. She announced clearly, your wedding night was stipulated by Duke Celeste when you got married, it must be done at least once a month. Leah Salitz silently cried in a corner, frowning in distress, and replied, I see. As for Duke Celeste, whom Luren mentioned, this man was a major contributor to the founding of the empire, a man who trained many great swordsmen and renowned diplomats. The head of the prestigious Duke Celeste family, and Leah's father. The person called. Thinking of this, Leah Salitz's face darkened. She truly didn't dare to think further. This man was so powerful that he even stipulated the number of wedding nights for his son-in-law. And daughter? Even if it was an arranged marriage, it was truly too much. Trying to recall the memories of this body, after a while, Leah Salitz clenched the bedspread and thought to herself, but, it's strange. Even though she tried to organize Leah Salitz's memories, nothing related to an arranged marriage or the Duke appeared. At this point, she seemed to have hypotheses about the plot changing. In Leah Salitz's mind, she imagined the marriage certificate. She searched every corner of her memory but could only find disappointment. It was as if there was nothing from the beginning. The paper even had the name of Emperor Sion Bermut, and her name, Leah Salitz. Leah Salitz realized, could it be that this is the part that wasn't in the original story? After realizing that this part of the story was not in the original, Leah Salitz immediately panicked, tearing at her hair. No, this is too much, isn't it? Even supporting characters have their own lives, this kind of terrible novel. Having thought things through, Leah Salitz reached a conclusion, that's right, in this chaotic world, I can only trust myself. Leah Salitz, her hair disheveled, slumped to the ground, and called weakly, Luren. Luren started, and replied worriedly, yes, your majesty. Leah Salitz's gloomy face was hidden by her hair. She tried to force a smile and asked, what do I have to prepare today? Then she pretended to be radiant, pushing her hair aside and excusing herself. Because of the alcohol, my memory is a bit bad, what do I usually do? Luren seriously replied, just need to adjust your mind and body to calm down. Hearing this, Leah Salitz just said, adjust my mind? Luren replied somewhat hesitantly, yes, your majesty, because you like quiet. Hearing this, Leah Salitz's face beamed like a flower and she happily said, I see, just need to keep quiet. She thought to herself, what's the big deal about that? Luren worriedly reminded her, Empress your majesty, really? After that, Luren's face darkened and she grabbed Leah Salitz's hand in a panic. In the 2 previous wedding nights, Empress your majesty screamed, did the emperor become very aggressive? Luren gripped Leah Salitz's hand tighter. She carefully instructed, so, this time for a peaceful night, you absolutely must. Don't scream anymore. It was nighttime. Leah Salitz wore a silk dress and a long coat over it. With her were Luren and 2 soldiers. Except for Leah Salitz. The other 3 had their faces covered with scarves. Leah Salitz took step by step on the green carpet in the emperor's room. Leah Salitz stood still for a while, observing her surroundings and thinking to herself, during the wedding night, the emperor becomes brutal and even screams. Is it due to some perverse preference? I never expected this, she thought to herself as she walked. The 2 soldiers respectfully opened the door for her to enter. When she entered the emperor's room, Leah Salitz felt like her eyes were opened. She looked around for a moment and thought to herself, the bedroom is completely different from what I thought. It looks warm and comfortable. Luren bowed, your majesty, then we will take our leave. After these words, the door gradually closed, and the light from outside also faded. Leah Salitz's face was as panicked as a 3-year-old whose mother had left. She called out loudly, what? She screamed silently in her heart, her thoughts in turmoil, no, don't leave me alone in this terrifying place. Hopefully, you can rest assured and enjoy. Luren's voice filtered through the crack of the door that was about to close tightly. After that, the door slammed shut. And Leah Salitz's cry of no definitely couldn't get out. Leah Salitz lay slumped on the bed, dejected. She muttered to herself, scolding herself, indeed, since the superior is the emperor, that's how it is? Exactly like the capitalist world. This is the cold corporate world. But what did this emperor do to make the empress scream like that? She looked around and asked herself the question. Leah Salitz lay on the bed, sighing, and then said to herself, and the matter with Duke Cromwell too, I completely don't remember anything about the key person in the story. Her mind was completely blank, she couldn't remember anything related to Duke Cromwell. She pulled at her hair, it's so frustrating, I'm going crazy. That's right, suddenly Leah Salitz grabbed the mattress on the bed. Anyway, meeting him would be dangerous, so I'll just go to sleep first. Saying this, Leah Salitz climbed onto the bed and pulled the blanket up to her chest, happily intending to go to sleep. She said this very decisively, closed her eyes, and planned to sleep until the next day. Lying on the soft, warm bed, Leah Salitz thought to herself with satisfaction, it's truly wonderful, the feeling is so comfortable. Now I'll probably drift off to sleep. Leah Salitz gradually fell asleep, the moonlight from the window shining into the room, dimly lighting a corner. Suddenly, Leah Salitz was startled, feeling as if someone was approaching her. From the dark corner, a large figure was walking closer to her. Leah Salitz pretended to be asleep, guessing in her heart, could it be, the emperor is here? But what the man did surprised Leah Salitz even more. He just lay down beside her, turning his back to her. Leah Salitz was a little scared, cold sweat flowing like a stream. She reminded and reassured herself, don't make a sound, just pretend to be asleep, just pretend to be asleep. But suddenly, her eyes softened considerably. She sat up, looked to the side, more than I thought, it's really quiet. Leah Salitz quickly lay down and covered her mouth with her hand. She was a little surprised, it must be better than I expected. After that, Leah Salitz secretly looked at Sion Bermut's back. She thought to herself, even the back view is truly comfortable. In contrast, Sion Bermut was lying down but both his ears were covered. Leah Salitz began to assess each part of the tyrannical emperor beside her, his thick black hair looks truly smooth. She imagined to herself, his hair alone is handsomer than the men in the concubine quarters. But, she suddenly sat up. It seemed Leah Salitz had seen something. At this moment, Sion Bermut was covering his ears. He lay there, his eyes tightly closed. Leah Salitz asked herself, why is he covering his ears while sleeping? He's acting like it's noisy. Could it be obsessive-compulsive disorder? A bold thought flashed in her mind. Leah Salitz guessed, the cause of this behavior is because he has experienced war. She thought to herself, but like this, it will hurt his ears. Thinking so, she immediately raised her hand towards Sion Bermut and called out softly, yes, your majesty. Immediately, Leah Salitz's small, fair arm was tightly gripped by Sion Bermut's rough, large hand. After that, Sion Bermut directly pushed her down onto the bed. This action made Leah Salitz's eyes widen in surprise. Sion Bermut's black hair fell down, his sleeping robe slipped off, revealing Sion Bermut's perfect body. He called out coldly, you. It's too noisy. Sion Bermut's eyes flashed with a few rays of hostility, glaring directly into Leah Salitz's eyes. Leah Salitz lay there motionless, her eyes wide open, memories flooding back like a waterfall. She thought to herself, this reaction, I've seen it before. Your Majesty, she called softly. Sion Bermut's hand gripped her wrist even tighter. Leah Salitz ignored Sion Bermut's force. Her eyes looked directly at him and asked, do you suffer from migraines? Let's go back to the time when Leah Salitz was watching her flower garden men argue in the concubine quarters. And also when Leah Salitz had problems with her harem. Somewhere in the castle, the atmosphere was gloomy, only lit by flickering candlelight. Beside it was an iron cage with many locks and large chains. A person was tied to a chair, barefoot, their hands tightly clamped, their voice trembling, help me. In front of him, a large figure stood there. The smell of the enemy's blood and the sound of screams filled the room, the tied person's hands were bleeding, constrained. This wasn't a coincidence. Sion Bermut looked at the image in front of him, his eyes became strangely empty. In Sion Bermut's heart, he thought to himself, but it disgusts me. Then, suddenly, Sion Bermut clutched his head, trying to reach for the wooden bar in front of him. He grabbed the iron bar tightly and pulled hard. The young man on the chair stopped screaming, his head slumped down. Sion Bermut stood there, towering over the image in front of him, one hand clutching his head. In Sion Bermut's memory, when he was a child, he was very sad when the sparrow died in his hands. He was angry and thought to himself, I can't get that scream out of my head. A man had slapped the sparrow out of Sion Bermut's hand and scolded him, don't mind these insignificant things, just let it be sad or happy. At that time, Sion Bermut cried, but he didn't receive a hug or any comforting. There was only the extremist act of rejecting all emotions. The man said, happiness or sorrow? That's not something you need to care about. That person was the one who had instilled and suppressed Sion Bermut's emotions. He had crammed a thought into Sion Bermut's head, an overly emotional emperor would lead to the empire's decline. Remember the prophecy, and dedicate yourself to the empire. The arrogant, tyrannical, and extremist words followed Sion Bermut through every age, such as when he was a child, he said, don't get involved in unnecessary things. When he became a teenager, he said again, emotions are the greatest obstacle. When he became a man, he still said, only by shedding emotions will you not feel pain. Congratulations on winning the throne, Your Majesty. Gradually, Sion Bermut's eyes lost their emotions, only smoke and war remained in his eyes. Even when Sion Bermut became the emperor of the Arya kingdom, that man constantly reminded him, please, Your Majesty, do not stop annihilating your enemies. Gradually, Sion Bermut's eyes were filled with nothing but killing. He even smiled and reminded Sion Bermut in his ear, that is the only way to stop the prophecy and save the kingdom. War was unbearable. For a person who spent his entire life controlling his emotions, all these noisy words constantly echoed in Sion Bermut's head, making him constantly ache and uncomfortable. He confided in his imprisoned heart, I always try to get used to being the head of the kingdom, these hallucinated sounds constantly pierce my ears. Sion Bermut couldn't bear the pain, clutching his head. Suddenly, a walking stick was slammed onto the ground, a deep voice rang out, Your Majesty. Do you want to stop the torture? He growled, threatening Sion Bermut. This man had platinum hair like Leah Salit's, and of course, he was Cromwell Celeste, the man who manipulated Sion Bermut's entire life, and the Arya kingdom. Sion Bermut coldly replied with a grunt, then he prepared to leave. As he walked past Cromwell, the latter coldly reminded his tyrant, there are still many captured enemies. To end the rebellion, you must interrogate them. To lessen your burden, didn't you delegate all official matters to me? Cromwell's words kept echoing in Sion Bermut's ears. He felt like he had become a puppet of Cromwell. Sion Bermut's face wrinkled, showing a little anger. Suddenly, he changed the subject, today is your wedding night, isn't it? Sion Bermut turned to look at Cromwell, who then said, then we should stop here so you can go back to your room. These words were a reminder for Sion Bermut to achieve some result on his wedding night. With Cromwell's daughter, Leah Salit's, Sion Bermut watched Cromwell's retreating back. He thought to himself, thinking back, he was the one who proposed the marriage. Even though I knew his purpose, I still agreed to marry because it doesn't matter who becomes the empress. If I had known she was such a noisy woman, I would have refused. Sion Bermut recalled the previous wedding nights, when Leah Salit saw Sion Bermut's bloody body. She screamed incessantly, deafening him. In Sion Bermut's memory, every time she met Sion Bermut, Leah Salit was always trembling and scared, Your Majesty, and then she would scream loudly, don't come near me. Torturing hands, blood-stained hands, and a cold Sion Bermut, who only knew killing, had long lost any trace of positive emotions in his mind. His image was imposing and majestic in battle and fire, but also very lonely, with no one beside him. From then on, the headaches kept recurring, like a punishment for the things he had done, making Sion Bermut constantly tremble. His hand hit the side of the bed so hard that it broke in half. Returning to reality, the flood of thoughts just now made Sion Bermut unable to control himself. He shouted again, glaring at Leah Salit's, frightening her, it's too noisy. Leah Salit's body cringed, trying not to scream. Leah Salit's tried to cover the sound coming from her throat with her hand. In his conversation with Cromwell, Sion Bermut had said, today I want peace and quiet, otherwise I cannot guarantee your daughter's life. But Cromwell still replied calmly, as you wish. This reaction surprised Sion Bermut a little, but he didn't show it on his face. He thought to himself, he agreed immediately. As he thought, he left, a daughter abandoned by her father, it wouldn't be fair if she died because of me. Cromwell watched Sion Bermut's gradually receding back. He slightly smirked. Your Majesty, Leah Salitz's soft voice called out, pulling Sion Bermut's mind back to reality. She asked again, do you suffer from migraines? These words made a few surprising rays flash in Sion Bermut's eyes, as if his secret had been discovered. Sion Bermut, like a wild beast, frowned and pushed Leah Salitz down onto the bed, scolding, be quiet. Sion Bermut's gaze at her was no different from looking at his enemy. He thought to himself, she's no different from anyone else. Countless speculations appeared in Sion Bermut's mind. Or, this woman will cry, right? Or, can I control myself? I don't know if I will kill her. Contrary to his speculation, Leah Salitz gently raised her hand and touched Sion Bermut, then softly said, Your Majesty, lie down and close your eyes. After that, she gained the upper hand, pushing Sion Bermut down onto the bed, and then asked, Aren't you sleepy? This action made Sion Bermut, who always kept a cold face, look dumbfounded and silly. Leah Salitz had a contrasting quality to Sion Bermut, she was innocent and pure. At this moment, Leah Salitz covered Sion Bermut with the blanket and said happily, I will tell you a story to help you sleep. Sion Bermut lay down due to confusion. He lay still without reacting, only with a little doubt, what is this? Today is different from usual. After that, Leah Salitz began her story, I met a man when I was 20, he was my first love. He always flirted with other women, so I wanted to break up. So Haid, yes, I said I would return the gifts you gave me. Leah Salitz kept chattering in Sion Bermut's ear. His eyes were still wide open, and he was somewhat disdainful of Leah Salitz's nonsensical story. Ignoring Sion Bermut's reaction, Leah Salitz continued, and then, I gave a very beautiful fountain pen to someone named Taylor for our 1-year anniversary. But he gave me cookies that he said he made, but he actually bought them from the discount section of a bakery. Sion Bermut lay silently on the bed, with no interaction with Leah Salitz, but his overthinking was still running in his head. Even though she is talking nonstop next to me. Instead of a headache, I feel drowsy. In Sion Bermut's ear were echoes of, so I said I wasn't happy, but he got angry and said I only care about money. I suddenly feel sleepy, Sion Bermut thought to himself. Leah Salitz continued to talk about her relationships, but the person named Sihun, Saint, was a kind person. Even though I always paid for everything when we went on dates, he always wrote letters to me, very romantic, right? Leah Salitz spoke while looking at the man in front of her. And pulled the blanket up higher for him. Sion Bermut looked at the platinum-haired girl with dreamy eyes, drifting off to sleep. But now, she's talking about her ex-boyfriends in front of her husband? She's truly a strange woman. Now, in front of Sion Bermut, he could only see the smile and the mocking thoughts he had for Leah Salitz. Leah Salitz leaned on her hand elegantly, looking at Sion Bermut, but now I'm fine, I left those men. Suddenly Leah Salitz said, there are still a few people in the harem, but that's in the past now. Sion Bermut thought to himself again, I thought she was an addict and as promiscuous as her father. Isn't she just foolish when it comes to love? But it seems she's not the easy type. Thoughts flickered through Sion Bermut's mind along with her sweet voice and nonsensical story, which acted as a sedative, helping Sion Bermut gradually fall asleep. Have a good night's sleep, Your Majesty, Leah Salitz whispered in the ear of the man in front of her who was deeply asleep. There are still a few men in the harem. Why are there still a few? In Sion Bermut's hazy thoughts, there were still a few equally nonsensical questions. After falling asleep, Sion Bermut and Leah Salitz slept soundly until the next morning, the bright sunlight from the window shining into their room. The light filtered into every corner of the room. Waking Sion Bermut up, he lightly opened his eyes and looked around. My head is empty, and it's really light, Sion Bermut unconsciously touched his head and thought, indeed, he had just had a good night's sleep. After that, Sion Bermut turned to look at the girl lying beside him without saying anything. In Sion Bermut's eyes, Leah Salitz looked like she had a filter on while sleeping. She was a muse, fiercely sweet. Sion Bermut thought to himself, it's truly a strangely quiet morning. Suddenly, Sion Bermut sat up, frowned, and even looked at Leah Salitz with a bullet-like gaze. He thought to himself, she was talking happily before, and now she's sleeping so soundly. After that, he reached out to take Leah Salitz's hand. But then, he didn't do as planned. Sion Bermut looked at Leah Salitz and thought to himself, my wife. This isn't as unpleasant as I thought, so it's quite surprising, He looked at Leah Salitz's adorable sleeping figure and said to himself. Sion Bermut sat on the bed, rubbing his head without feeling any pain or discomfort. He thought, I had a better sleep because of her, this is strange. Throughout the years, Sion Bermut had searched for many methods, but no medicine had ever helped him reduce his headaches and insomnia, but after hearing this woman's voice, I truly slept better last night. What did she do? Sion Bermut's face darkened, staring at the girl who was sleeping soundly below. After a moment, Sion Bermut sighed and shook his head. Anyway, having a relaxed mind is something to be grateful for. It seemed Sion Bermut's mood was better today than it had been recently. While Leah Salitz was sleeping, Sion Bermut adjusted his clothes in front of the mirror. Thoughts about his headaches and Leah Salitz constantly flowed through his mind. My headaches have made meetings with ministers very difficult. I have delegated almost all work to Duke Celeste, but I cannot continue doing that. I should take this opportunity to complete the postponed documents, Sion Bermut thought to himself as he opened the door, preparing to leave the room. His hand was on the doorknob, but Sion Bermut's eyes were not looking outside but at the girl, Leah Salitz, who was sleeping soundly inside. He thought to himself, and perhaps working can be a way to repay a good night's sleep. Then the door slightly opened, and light from outside filtered in. After a moment, the door closed tightly, returning to the quiet atmosphere of last night. So, who was left in the concubine quarters? Sion Bermut mused as he walked. Inside the room, Leah Salitz had woken up. She stretched, embracing the morning sun, indicating a very good night's sleep. Leah Salitz's face was radiant. She was secretly happy. Ah, I slept so well. She happily chirped on the bed, complimenting herself. She thought to herself, last night was wonderful, wasn't it? The Emperor fell asleep surprisingly easily. Hee, my ASMR is really effective, right? At this moment, Luren stood beside her, bowing and asking, Empress, did you sleep well? Leah Salitz got out of bed and replied happily, yes, good morning, Luren, what's the schedule for today? As if a switch had been flipped on Luren, she began to rattle off Leah Salitz's schedule. As you know, after every social gathering night, there is always a tea party planned with Duke Celeste. The Duke is expected to arrive at the palace in 2 hours. Leah Salitz's face darkened, and she asked with annoyance, why is the Duke interested in social gathering nights? It's no longer too unfamiliar to me. This made her even more uncomfortable. In Leah Salitz's memory, every time she met Cromwell, he would sit in the superior position and question her. When will you give me a grandchild? I am old and waiting for death. But Leah Salitz would only reply, Father, I'm only 20. This fantasy, I still have to listen to nagging about marriage in my free time. Cromwell would chatter about various things when he met her. Nothing is better than dragon tail soup to give birth to. A son, don't leave anything, eat it all. Thinking of this, Leah Salitz began to feel tired, dizzy, and headachy. Her voice trembled, thinking back, I think I will feel sick, perhaps in about an hour. Could you tell my father not to come to the palace today? This ridiculous reason left Luren speechless. But, Your Majesty, isn't that the event you've been looking forward to for so long? Luren asked in surprise. These words startled Leah Salitz. She looked blankly at Luren and asked, Really? Luren replied, Yes, Your Majesty. She continued, You said that was the only day your father would visit. At this moment, Leah Salitz could only silently blame this stupid brain for what it had calculated that she couldn't remember. She tore at her hair, screaming in her heart, Don't give the supporting characters such a pathetic backstory, really. Leah Salitz remembered reading the novel. The author had created a blog called Leah Salitz's Harem Empire, which included a section, sharing honest thoughts about father. She thought to herself, but I still hate it, I don't want to care about other people's family matters. After that, let's say it won't happen again. Leah Salitz whispered, Unbelievable. These words made Luren stiffen. Luren bowed her head and replied, I understand. Fortunately, last night ended without incident. If I tell the Duke, he will feel very relieved. Satisfied with her close maid, Leah Salitz smiled, resting her hand, and lightly hummed. Then she instructed Luren, Do that. By the way, I need to see the imperial doctor today. Luren asked worriedly, You mean right now? Leah replied, Yes, prepare the bath. After instructing Luren, Leah Salitz continued to plan the next steps to save her little life. There's no time to relax, Leah will die from poisoning, I need to understand this body to prepare for threats. To survive in the future, I need to check my health right now, she thought to herself. Suddenly the room door burst open, someone called out from inside, "The Empress is present here." A long-haired young man directly pushed the door open, happily calling out loudly, "Empress, how can you be here?" This young man had an androgynous beauty. He smiled and flattered Leah Salitz, "If you had called, I would have run here before I could even put on my shoes." His dazzling brilliance and sweet words like melted sugarcane stiffened Leah Salitz. She thought to herself, Leah must have chosen this person just for his looks. After that, Leah Salitz replied, "No, it's just, I have a few things I want to ask." This guy happily invited Leah Salitz to sit down. "I understand, please have a seat." Leah Salitz and he sat on the same sofa. He kept leaning close to Leah Salitz and smiling. Leah Salitz turned to look at the young man in front of her and was a little uncomfortable. "Why are you so close?" After that, she deliberately moved away. Leah Salitz reminded him, "Isn't this too close? Even for a consultation?" He heard these strange words and was puzzled. "I beg your pardon. But last time, you said this would be easier to hear." He leaned directly against Leah Salitz and whispered. The corners of Leah Salitz's mouth twitched a few times. Immediately after, Leah Salitz distanced herself a meter away from this guy. She cursed under her breath, "Even when the doctor is moving, this is truly too much." She reminded him, "I will pay attention to keeping my distance from now on." These words made him dumbfounded. After regaining her composure, Leah Salitz cleared her throat. "More importantly, lately I have been more concerned about my health." She pretended to seriously ask this young man for a few things. "I want to be tested for allergies or a full body checkup. You certainly know what's best as a doctor. Additional tests may take about a day to prepare." He smiled and interrupted Leah Salitz. "I don't know anything." Leah Salitz shouted, "What?" He replied, "I don't know about those things." The maids beside them also looked a little concerned but pretended to look around, their ears not hearing, their eyes not seeing. But on the body, he raised his slender hand. "I know your softness well." This guy touched Leah Salitz's shoulder and said in a seductive voice. This action made Leah Salitz a little scared. He looked no different from a pervert. After that, Leah Salitz said something, but the room was filled with the echoing voice of that quack. "Why don't you remember? Or you wouldn't let me do that. You said there were limits even to serving you in the bedroom." To him, Leah Salitz was like a rose growing on a towering peak. He continued with corny words, "But on your lonely throne, are you tired of being alone, my empress? I want to know more about you. Please trust me." And Leah Salitz immediately brushed this guy's misbehaving hand off her body. She interrupted him, "No, that's not it." Leah Salitz's eyes changed, they became colder. What kind of imperial doctor doesn't know about the empress's condition? It's miraculous that you're still alive. Guards, take this man away immediately. As he was being dragged out by the soldiers, the quack was still screaming, "Empress, there must be some misunderstanding. If something is missing, please let me correct it." Your Majesty," his voice echoed, but Leah Salitz didn't care. She turned around angrily and went inside. Leah Salitz looked at the thing on the table. She sneered disdainfully, a broken stethoscope, even covered in dust. Holding the dusty stethoscope in her hand, Leah Salitz thought to herself, keeping someone like that as a doctor means I'll be poisoned soon or perhaps worse. After that, she called Lurin, "Who brought that man on board?" Lurin replied, "Your Majesty, you chose him from the candidates. You said his face made you trust him quite a bit." These words were like a thunderclap. Leah Salitz collapsed helplessly on the ground, silently scolding the owner of this body. "Leah, she's a useless beauty. She really chose him for his appearance." After that, Leah Salitz casually tore up the quack's medical license. A deadly smile bloomed on her face. She thought to herself, but he graduated from a medical university. His scores were terrible. A good degree like this can also be bought. As she was about to tear it further, she suddenly stopped. "Wait, I feel like I missed something. Documents submitted to the Empress are usually checked by lower-level officials first. How did such a terrible person become a candidate?" This suspicion made her shudder with surprise. Leah Salitz's face darkened, the partially torn paper slowly fell. Thinking of this, she slightly pursed her lips and whispered, "That could just be Leah's prank, but it could also be wrong." The entire room was filled with tension as Leah Salitz felt uneasy in her heart. It seemed someone incompetent in medicine had slipped through. It seemed someone had been secretly backing him. Her emotions at this moment were incredibly confused with so many things happening. It was no surprise that Leah liked handsome men. Suddenly, Leah Salitz remembered his highly suspicious recent appearance. It seemed the doctor was also chosen based on his looks. They must have bribed a handsome graduate. At this point, she suddenly realized their dark and meticulous plot. Secretly bringing in someone so useless, if they benefited from all that trouble. If the plan went smoothly, it wouldn't cause any suspicion. It would obviously become a simple case of poisoning. Everything was not a random event or an accident, but a meticulously planned scheme, because before knowing the cause of the deterioration in her health, she must have been poisoned for a long time. Leah's death was more calculated than expected. Now Leah Salitz also realized that the entire process was hidden by some invisible force, and although the cause of the emperor's death was suicide, it was not mentioned in the original story. She began to use all her sharp reasoning skills to find out what had happened. If he was willing to listen to screams all day in that dark and dirty basement, then it was likely related to health, rather than physical or mental well-being. If the Empress's private doctor accepted bribes, then the Emperor's health would not be guaranteed. Leah Salitz could not just stand by and watch the wicked flourish, so she was determined to change this dirty plan. I will definitely prevent the source of this incident. If she was weak and didn't protect herself, there would be a day when she would be eliminated, so Leah Salitz was determined not to let this happen. I will save myself and save the Emperor. For a peaceful future. After making up her mind, she didn't change her decision and immediately called her, Lurin. Leah Salitz didn't want to delay any longer and had to act immediately. Let's go see His Majesty quickly. Yes. Before directly confronting the evil forces, there were a few things Leah Salitz needed to understand clearly. I have a few things to confirm. Where is he? To her question, Lurin immediately replied with a stuttering attitude, he is in his study. Although Sion Bermut was busy with work, she couldn't delay this, so she immediately went to see him. What? Why is the Empress here? What kind of trouble is the Empress going to cause this time? Standing in front of Sion Bermut's study, the place was as quiet as ever, with only guards standing watch. When they saw Leah Salitz appear, they immediately bowed respectfully, greetings, Empress. She didn't bother with formalities and gave them a bright smile like a flower, then warmly asked, hello, is His Majesty in the room? Although Leah Salitz was stating her request afterwards, the two soldiers couldn't help but freeze for 5 seconds at her words and actions. Can you open the door for me? I've come to ask him a few urgent questions. Did the Empress just greet us? However, they didn't dare to disobey the order, so they could only bow awkwardly. We apologize, Your Majesty requested not to meet anyone unless there is a prior appointment. Hearing this, Leah Salitz was reluctant to make things difficult for them, but she also didn't want to leave. I really have to ask him right now, is that not possible? We apologize, Your Majesty. Seeing that she didn't cause a fuss, both of them breathed a sigh of relief. It seems it's not possible, I can't do anything. However, Leah Salitz didn't intend to leave easily like that and said, then I'll have to go and ask directly. And so, without saying a word, she immediately darted past them like a flash of lightning. Ack, why are you going so fast? What? Empress, you're not allowed to. Although she was the mother of the nation, Leah Salitz didn't care much about etiquette and just stormed into his room. The guard saw her act so abruptly and couldn't help but panic and run to stop her. Empress, you can't do this. If you enter so suddenly now. Inside the study, Sion Bermut was discussing some matters with the ministers. She didn't hesitate and just stormed into the room, not allowing the servants and guards behind her to stop her in time. When Sion Bermut saw Leah Salitz act so unexpectedly, he only asked coldly, what is this? When she met him, she also gave a friendly beauty queen smile and bowed respectfully, greetings, Your Majesty. Faced with Leah Salitz's disrespect, Sion Bermut immediately questioned her, didn't you hear the rule? Uninvited guests are forbidden. However, she acted adorable and admitted her mistake. Forgive me, but there are a few things I need to ask right now. Hearing this, he was extremely curious about what kind of fierce wind had brought her here. I'm curious about the importance of those questions. Of course, nothing is more important than this. However, contrary to Sion Bermut's expectations, she blurted out a question that was completely out of place, Your Majesty, have you had breakfast yet? Faced with Leah Salitz's somewhat baffling question, he froze, unable to utter a single word. The two guards at this moment were also afraid that Sion Bermut would erupt in anger, so they immediately knelt down and apologized. Both of them quickly begged, hoping to appease Sion Burmut somewhat. Please end our lives, Your Majesty, this is our fault for not being able to stop the Empress. Although the two of them were silently praying in their hearts, Leah Salitz continued to ask, you must be hungry after dealing with official duties all morning, right, Your Majesty?